All right. Well, I really, really want to honor your time and thank you for coming to this call to see if homeschooling is right for you. So I am going to be sharing a little bit of my heart, some information that I've gathered for you and for myself over the years that I just want to share with you because I know many of you are really in a time of like trying to figure out, should we homeschool? And some of you are like, we are homeschooling, I just don't know what it's gonna look like. And so I just really, really wanted to just come alongside you because sometimes when we don't know what we're signing up for, it can be really scary and overwhelming. And you kind of feel like you're in the dark. So I just wanted to be like a flashlight because if at least we have a flashlight, we know if we're going to stumble on some rocks and we need to step over them and avoid the potholes. So I am wanting to come alongside you as a friend. I hope that you have like a coffee or a smoothie or something because if it was just me and you at a coffee shop, this is what I would tell you. First of all, I would tell you that you can do this. I promise you this is not rocket science. I know a lot of you don't know who I am, and so I want to give you just a little bit of history on me and my family to give you some framework for this call. So I'm going to share with you my screen, and I have a little PowerPoint here that we're going to look at. So my husband and I have been married for 21 years, and we have 7 beautiful children, and our oldest just graduated, and we homeschooled all 12 years. He went to kindergarten, and we actually chose to homeschool because my husband and I were actually professional musicians. I'm a singer, he's a guitar player, and we lived in a tour bus for 10 years. And so clearly that is not good for staying in one place for very long and enrolling kids in school. And so we, through like, by the time Eric was 5, he had traveled all over the world. So at 5 though, we thought, well, we should probably settle down. So we did that for a little bit, and then we were still playing music and he missed too much school. So in grade 1, we decided to homeschool and just continue with our music. So this is Eric. He is currently signed up to go to college in the fall, and he's going to Bible college, and we're just super excited for him. We had a beautiful graduation for him, and he's just a really great kid. If any of you know him, you know that he's well-rounded, not socially inept in any way. Because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to homeschool. I don't know if my kid's going to be able to function in the world. I'm here to tell you, because I have living proof, you're not going to screw up your kids by homeschooling. I promise you, okay? This is us homeschooling, our first day of homeschooling in 2017, when we just had the 6. We had just had Justin, and this is kind of something that I do on the first day of school for each child. We do a scavenger hunt for all of our school supplies. So they get their backpack and then they go all over the house and they scavenger hunt for their school supplies. So they're just kind of a fun thing to kick off our school year. This is a more recent photo. This was in February this year. We went on a Disney cruise, and so this is the whole family. This is our newest addition, Jace, who actually turns 1 today. And this is just my husband and I as we did music over the years. And we chose to homeschool probably because we didn't have much of a choice. But honestly, I went in a bit kicking and screaming, not gonna lie, because I was like, I don't know if I can handle being at home with my kids 24/7. I feel like I'm gonna have to pin them to the wall at some point because I will lose my mind. I'm not a patient person. I'm, like to do my own thing. I need some quiet time. I don't know if I can do this, but my husband, he was very adamant, and he was like, you know what? I really believe this is going to be the best thing. And if we partner in this and we're in this together, I really think that we're going to do this and do it well. So we jumped right in, and one day at a time, we were doing it. So to start out, I wanted to share with you the qualifications you'll need to homeschool your kids. A lot of people, this is their major fear. I'm not a teacher, I've never taught children before, but you know what? There's just a very small list of qualifications you need to homeschool your kids. 6 things, so get a pen and paper. Number 1, you need to love your kids. Number 2, you need to be able to read and follow directions. Number 3, you have to be capable and willing to learn a new skill. Homeschooling is a new skill. You've never done it before. Your kids have never done it before. You're gonna have to give yourself some grace to be able to homeschool. It's gonna be different than something you've ever experienced before. But I promise you, if you're willing, you can do it. You need to be willing to ask for help. It takes a village to raise a child. So over the years, we've had different support systems. There was some seasons in my life where I got a house cleaner once a month to just come and do a deep clean because I just couldn't stay on top of it when all the littles were in the house. Other times we've had a nanny come in like 4 days a week, for the morning, or sometimes for 9 to 5 or whatever I needed at that season of my life. Post-baby, I tend to need a little more support. So sometimes I would ask a friend to come and help me make a bunch of meals. Whatever support that you need, just ask for it because people are willing to help. You have to be, so number 5, you have to be willing to swallow your pride for the sake of your children. Now this is twofold. It's really, really tempting to go on Instagram, to go on Facebook, to go on Pinterest or whatever, or to talk to your neighbor and to compare your child's progress and their teaching style and all the activities they have planned to what you have planned. And you can easily fall into the trap of feeling like a failure or like you're not measuring up. But listen to me. They don't have your children. They don't have your skill set. You have your skill set. You have your way of teaching. Your child has their way of learning, and they're going to learn at a completely different pace than the guy down the road. So you really, really need to put blinders on when you homeschool because it is otherwise going to be a major distraction. It's not going to serve you and it's not going to serve your kids. So you need to be able to swallow your pride that way. The second way you need to be able to swallow your pride is that now that you have your children in your home 24/7, I shouldn't say 24/7, but you know what I mean, more often than usual if you were sending them to school, you are going to have little mirrors all over the place. They are going to reflect the good, the empathy, the kindness that you show them, but they will also reflect your weaknesses. And you have to be willing, when you screw up, to say, look, Mommy was in a really bad mood this morning. There's a lot going on in my head and my heart, and I'm really sorry that I lashed out at you, or I'm really sorry that I yelled. I'm really sorry that I was bugging you and on your case about something that I know you already know you needed to do. Whatever the case may be, you need to be able to learn to teach your children and teach yourself to say, listen, do you forgive me for doing this? And to be able to say, I forgive you if your children ask for forgiveness from you. And the last thing is you need to be able to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term gain. Now, there's probably 4 types of people that are on this call. And you probably fall in one of 4 things. So A, you're probably like, okay, I want to learn how to homeschool because I just need to get through this COVID thing. And then as soon as that changes and I can send my kids back to school, great, I will. The second person is like, I have some health concerns. I don't know if I'll ever send my kids back to school, but for now I'm certainly not. Or the third person is like, I've always considered homeschooling, but this is kind of like my tipping point. And then the fourth kind of person is kind of like, oh my gosh, she has 7 kids. I'm just curious how she does this. I welcome all of you. But this last point of sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term gain, whether you're in it for till December or whatever, whenever you can send your kids back to school, or whether you're in for it till they hit grade 12. You are going to have to make sacrifices, and you have to realize your kids are going to be making sacrifices too. So a little bit of grace has to be extended in both directions. But if you can do these 6 things, which most of us can, intuitively, you as a parent love your child like nobody else. No other teacher, no other doctor, no other whoever is going to love and have your child's best interest at heart. And I don't know about you, but a parent's love for a child is intuitive. You know when there's something up with your kid. You know if they're having a difficulty either learning or something like that. You pick up on that faster than anybody else. And so you have the opportunity to really give your kids a real heads up and a head start. Because if you start to realize early on, you know, that your kids maybe is not reading properly, or they're mixing their B's and their P's, you're like, do they have dyslexia? You're going to pick that up right away, and you're going to be able to get them help long before maybe even the school system would have diagnosed them. So things like that, homeschooling can have a real advantage as well. Okay, so now I know a lot of you got on this call to know the nitty-gritties of like how to start. So I really, really wanted to be practical for you, because I get it. There's a lot going on out there as far as information. It's hard to sift through it all. So I want to be super practical. When people start homeschooling, a lot of times they simply don't realize that there's actually 3 types of homeschooling you can choose from. And so we're going to go through those 3. I'm going to talk about funding for each one of them. I'm going to talk about what you're going to need to do, your responsibilities versus what the school is going to be responsible for, or the school board you sign up with is going to be responsible for. And hopefully this will clear the cobwebs so that you can see straight ahead what exactly you're going to need to do to set your kids up for success in September. So there's 3 types of homeschooling. The first type of homeschooling is called school delivered. The second is parent delivered education. And the third is shared delivery education. So shared can be a 50-50 split between the parents and the school, or it can be as big as a 90-10 split either way between the parent and the school. So a school delivered program looks like this. Sometimes it's called aligned or teacher-led, distance education, online education, cyber education, okay? This is what a lot of parents did, a lot of you guys did when COVID hit, is you received a school program that was delivered to your home that you needed to execute, okay? So as homeschoolers, you have that option. So this is parents that employ a school for the planning, delivery, and evaluation of your education. The responsibility for the education is maintained by the school, where the student is registered, and the students must complete the outcomes of the Alberta Program of Study. Now I'm talking about Alberta because that's where I'm from, but this would apply if you're living in a state in the US, or if you're living in Saskatchewan, or wherever you are. You just have to look up, you know, switch Alberta for whatever. So Saskatchewan Program of Study, or Florida Program of Study for Education. Okay, so if you ever see Alberta, just switch it for wherever you're at. Okay, next is the school gets a basic grant. This is for Alberta specifically. Gets a basic grant of $6,679.70 per student, but you get 0 personally, because all you have to buy is buy your paper and your pens. You don't have to purchase any curriculum. The school's giving you everything, okay? Now, the Alberta Home Education Regulation does not apply to students in school delivered programs. So though it's a homeschooling option, you're not under the Home Education Act, okay? You actually fall under the regular school act like regular students. Now, these are the pros and the cons. So the pros is you have less year prep work in choosing curriculum, because you don't have to choose a curriculum, it's just given to you. But you also don't have any input on the curriculum that is chosen. So if, you know, I don't know, something in science or social or whatever is being taught and your kid's not interested, and you have to be at a computer forcing them to do this work, that's not fun as a parent, okay? Next is, the pro is there's no prep work for lessons. The teacher teaches everything, the teacher evaluates everything, and a grade 12 diploma is granted. Now the cons are you're not learning alongside your child. you have less awareness of your child's progress and also of any learning disabilities that you're going to need to address right away. Or even just like they don't know their multiplications. So they're having trouble in math, and when you're learning alongside your child, you're like, dude, you don't know 2 times 2. So no wonder this is taking you 20 minutes. Let's just back up a step. Let's do a few flashcards for a couple of days. And then we're going to go back to your math lessons that it doesn't take you 15 minutes to figure out what 2 times 2 is. You know what I mean? This is also difficult to maintain if you have more than 2 children at home. Because believe me, you will pull out your hair trying to do a school delivered program for 5 kids or 4 kids or whatever. It's just a lot. You must complete the outcomes set out by Alberta Education. It will take you more time, like actual physical time during the day to do school, and you will be spending more time on devices because most of the time curriculum is handed through an internet service-based program. Okay, then you have shared delivery. Okay, so this is called semi-aligned or blended sometimes. So this is where parents choose a combination of home education and school delivered programming. The school must plan, deliver, and evaluate an agreed upon portion of the program. At minimum, the school must deliver, they must deliver 50% of the program for elementary and junior high students and 20% of the program for high school students. Parents are entirely responsible for planning, delivering, and evaluating just the balance of the education of their children under the supervision of the school. The school is required to provide parents with half of the homeschool portion of funding. So the homeschool portion of funding, we'll see the next slide, or the next couple of slides when we talk about parent delivered, is just a little over $800. So for shared delivery, because you're responsible to purchase some of the curriculum, they're gonna give you $417 to do that with, okay? And this is in Alberta. This is particular for Alberta. I'm gonna talk a little bit later about Saskatchewan and Lloydminster because Lloydminster is a exception to the rule to a certain degree. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is for Alberta. Your funding would be $417.70. And this funding is good for anything you don't wear. So for example, you can claim your music lessons and you can claim your books and your pencils, but you wouldn't be able to claim a piano, or you wouldn't be able, you could claim dance classes, but you wouldn't be able to claim your costume, for example. So anything you don't wear. So you could, you know, pay for hockey, but you wouldn't be able to pay for your skates. And some school boards are a little bit finicky about that, so be sure to check with your school board, okay? But as a general rule with Alberta, that's the case. Okay, so the Alberta Home Education Regulation applies only to the parent-taught portion of the program, and the remainder is regulated under the School Act like a regular school. Okay, so pros and cons. Pros is there's less year prep work in choosing the curriculum because you're only doing a portion of it. There's less prep work for lessons, the teaching is shared, the evaluation is shared, and your grade 12 diploma is optional, but easily granted. The cons is you don't get to choose all of your curriculum, so you still might get stuck teaching something your kids dislike, or a program that maybe your child has a hard time learning through that learning style. So if your child is like a kinesthetic learner that learns by doing with their hands, or if they're an audio learner, if they learn better by somebody like reading to them or teaching them, and like an audio book would be better to teach, this can be hard because usually these materials are brought to you visually. So just a side note. And then the other con is it's more institutional input into your kids' education. Some people like that, some people don't like that. So I wasn't sure if I should put it in the pros or the cons, but I just put it here. You must complete outcomes set out by Alberta Education for your school delivered programs. And it's difficult to maintain if more than 2 children are homeschooling in your home. So it's less difficult, but it's still a little bit hard because you do have to make sure that they're doing everything that the school is giving to you, that those things are done. Now, I will say this, when I first started homeschooling, I did do shared delivery because I felt a little bit insecure about starting. And so there was a couple of things that were sent to me from the school that I registered with. And I liked it, but at the same time, I quickly learned that Eric was a kinesthetic learner. He learned with his hands by doing. So instead of reading about the Nile in Egypt, we actually went out to the sandbox and built the Nile. And he was able to retain the information so much better if he could do something with his hands. Same thing with my Michael, he's a kinesthetic learner. This year we learned about the Roman Empire, and I would just give her paper, pens, and tape and scissors. And while I was teaching the lesson, he was building whatever triggered his memory in the lesson that I was vocalizing. And he built the Colosseum, he built like the Vatican in paper. I mean, he was crazy. Anyhow, so you don't have as much flexibility in that way. Okay, so this is parent delivered. This is when you think of homeschooling, this is like what you're probably thinking of, okay? This is like your traditional homeschooling, parent-led home education, basic homeschooling. So parents are entirely responsible for planning, delivering, evaluating their child's education. Parents must notify a public, Catholic, or accredited private school of their intent to home educate. This school becomes their associate school. And this associate school will probably provide you a facilitator that will come twice a year to your house to just make sure that your child is learning correctly, doesn't have any learning difficulties, that they're capable of getting through the material that you've chosen, so on and so forth. Parents may choose the approach. Now, this is going to be for a whole other call if anybody is interested, but there's different types of this parent-delivered homeschooling. There's classical, there's unschooling, there's more structured. And this is going to really depend on your personality. So some of us are more linear and we're more, green. I don't know if you guys know the 4 colored personalities, but they like detail work, they like structure, they like Excel spreadsheets. This is my husband. And then there's myself. I am very artistic and kind of like fun, fly by the seat of my pants. So unschooling for me works really, really well. So we actually do a combination of classical and unschooling together personally in our home. But that's going to be for you to choose. And like I said, that's a whole other class that we're not going to get into, but you get to just discern and decide your learning outcomes and the resources that you want to teach. You can use what's set out for Alberta education for your kids, or, which is what most of us do, there's a list of desired outcomes that Alberta education puts out, and you can accomplish these by the time they hit grade 12. And it's a desired outcomes for homeschoolers. And believe me, it is not rocket science. It's like things like being able to read and receive instruction from reading. Being able to calculate mathematical equations to be able to solve problems. To be able to communicate using computer technologies. So it's not like you have to learn about medieval, it's like not that detailed. It's very vague, but there is this desired outcome list. And for those of you that are on the Zoom call and got tickets for this class, I will be emailing that out to you. So don't fret, I've got it for you. I got your back. I will be emailing that out to you, okay? And that's a really, really good list to just have on hand as a parent-delivered educator. I just like to go back to that. It kind of gives me a bit of a guideline. But when you look at it, don't be overwhelmed. You have 12 years to accomplish it. Okay, and in Alberta, to assist in the purchase of learning resources, the associate school is required to provide the parent 50% of the funding received from Alberta Education. So what your school board will receive is 1670.81 from Alberta Ed, okay? Now, your school board will give you 50% of that in Alberta, which is about $835.40 per child. So that's the money that you get to homeschool your child, to buy your curriculum, and to buy your supplies. Now I want you to know something. Two things. The first thing is you don't get this money in cash. You go and you buy your curriculum and you hand in your receipts, and they will cover your receipts up to $835.40. So that's how that works. You have to fill out a form and provide the physical receipts. Secondly, homeschooling does not have to be expensive. You can homeschool on a shoestring, I promise you. The library is an incredible resource, and the internet is an incredible resource. Most homeschooling curriculums, the books, they run at like under $20. So like the child's booklet or whatever. The teacher manuals tend to be a little bit more expensive, but see it as an investment. So maybe the teacher manual will be $50, but you can use it for the next 4 years with the next 3 kids or however many kids you have in your house. There's also amazing homeschool swap sites where you can buy curriculum secondhand for like $5. So this does not have to be super an expensive like endeavor for you, okay? All right, and then lastly, based upon the education plan you create and hand into your board, there will be 2 evaluations required per year. So like I said, somebody will come to your house, and this is not to be freaked out. This is not like a report card or anything like that. These people are at your service to just like help you as a teacher. Be like, you know what, like I'm having a hard time teaching my kid how to read. And they might do an assessment on the child and be like, well, yeah, it's probably because I can see they have dyslexia or whatever. Or they're like, you know what, why don't you try using this program or that program instead? And so they're just here to like guide you along. They're not here to like, I mean, they're here to check up on you in a sense, but they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you're only at page 15 and you should be at page 50 in your math book. Shame on you. That's not the point. The point is to just make sure that you are educating, that you do have your child's best interest at mind, you know, that there's no, you know, foul play in your home. And so it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And I've found our facilitators to be like amazing, super, super helpful, really kind, and willing to just give us a hand up when we need it. Okay, so this being said, these are the pros and the cons. So the pros is you have free reign on your curriculum as long as, again, it's within the guidelines of the home education regulation schedule, which I'm going to give you. You can work with your teaching style and your kids' learning styles. So there's 3 main learning styles, visual, audio, and kinesthetic. So I highly recommend, there's some books that you can get on this. I think there's one called Your Child Learning Style. I think that's what it's called. Just Google that, or on Amazon, Google that. And just figure out what's your child's primary learning style. In our house, we are primarily audio and kinesthetic learners. So my kids will learn very, very well watching a video because they're going to hear it. And they'll do very well listening to a lesson on an audiobook. So like our history, we do a lot of our listening on audiobooks. They remember the facts so much better. We do a lot of our math to music. Yes, we're a musical family, but my children are audio learners. So everything is, all the multiplication tables are done to music. So knowing that is super helpful. You also have to learn your teaching style. So this is the learning curve that I had to have a little bit was, I'm a visual learner. So I like checklists. I need to like make notes and write things out if I'm going to absorb information. I'm also an audio learner, but I'm primarily a visual learner. So when I first started, not knowing this, I was doing everything on paper, visually, writing notes and that sort of a thing. And my first 2 kids, that wasn't their jam. So they weren't retaining the information. But that's what I knew because I was schooled and that was the way that I loved to learn. So I had to just tweak a little bit. We still used paper, we still used books and that sort of a thing. But if I really wanted to hit home a certain lesson, I knew that I needed to deliver audio or kinesthetically in order for it to really be maintained and retained. And instead I used the visual resources to train me so that I could train the children. Okay, Continue with the pros, you have tons of flexibility over the delivery and schedule of the education you provide. It's much easier to maintain if more than 2 children are homeschooling in your home. There's more funding in your pocket for supplies. You learn alongside your child. You have less time needed to do school, and your grade 12 diploma is still optional. So you necessarily might not, like if you continue to do homeschooling traditionally, your child might not graduate with the grade 12 diploma. And nowadays, and this is a whole other conversation, but just so that you know, nowadays, you can do a lot without a grade 12 diploma. And I know that that's not the way that we're taught. And a lot of times, you know, people are like, well, you can't get into university, you can't do that. Yes, but there are ways around it. And homeschoolers that don't have a diploma have something called a portfolio. Most colleges will look at a portfolio and they will ask you to either challenge the exams, or they will just let you in using the portfolio. For university, you do need to challenge the exams and that sort of a thing, but there's ways around it, so don't fret. If your child is going to go to post-secondary institute, there's certainly a way that you can do it by traditionally homeschooling. And I know, talking to some people that have had students where they homeschooled traditionally and then send them to university, it was a very, very rich experience because they were able to get some great tutors and were able to get in very quickly because they had a love for learning, and their portfolio was so diversified that they actually got accepted into the university programs in front of others that had grade 12 diplomas because of their portfolios. Okay, so cons is it can be overwhelming to sift through curriculum options when you first start out, but this is where being a part of a great online homeschooling group on Facebook or something like that, reaching out to those that you know that are homeschooling with the same age of children is a great resource as well. And seriously, Google it. Like, there's so many amazing resources. There is a bit of a steeper learning curve, and there's no formal teachers that will be teaching. But I want you to know that you can teach your children. You taught them how to walk, you taught them how to use a spoon, you taught them how to talk. It's in you to give, okay? You can do this. And you might not know how to teach your child how to read necessarily, or, you know, how to do grade 8 science, but the homeschooling stuff nowadays is like dummy proof. I mean, it's got like some of the books that I've got are like in red, say this to your child, and then it's like blah blah blah. So you say this, and then it's like expect this response. So, and then blah blah blah, like what your kids should say back to you. So the homeschooling materials nowadays are like, anybody can do this. You do not have to have a science degree to teach grade 8 science. It's broken down because homeschooling materials know that you're a parent that has never taught this before. They've got you, okay? And the materials are like awesome. They've got like pre-made kits for chemistry. They've got like all sorts of things. So you are not going to be left high and dry going like, I don't know what to teach. The curriculum is going to guide you step by step. Okay, so I know there's these dates floating around online all over the place going like, oh my gosh, I have to register, blah, blah, blah. So this is the deal. In order for you to get funding for your child, you need to register. My recommendation is before September 15th. Now, I know the date officially is September 30th, but the official date is actually the date your board has to hand in notification of intent to the Alberta government. So look at it this way. You need to register with the school board first. Then the school board gets your registration, and then they have to register by September 30th with the Alberta government. If you only hand in your registration on the 30th and you're in a queue and your school board doesn't get to you before then, because granted, everybody and their dog is going to be doing this, you're not going to get your funding. So better to be safe, register early with your school board. And I'm saying before September 15th because everybody is like, there's a big demand for homeschooling right now because of what's going on in our world. So just do yourself a favor. Don't get caught without any funding, and do your board a favor and the people that are serving you on your board, and register early so that they can get their paperwork in. because believe me, I have friends that work at these boards and they are putting in super long hours the 29th and the 30th of September trying to get everybody's forms into the Alberta government on time so that you can get your funding, and they're not going to get somebody calling them mad that they didn't get their funding. Okay. Now, I was telling you earlier about Alberta versus Saskatchewan versus, you know, Florida or wherever you're at and coming in for this call. So there's lots and lots and lots of boards to choose from. You would be shocked how many just in Alberta you have to choose from. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens. Now, those of you that again are on this call and had a Zoom, got tickets to get into the Zoom, I'm going to send you a link. It's an Excel spreadsheet of all of the Alberta boards and what they have to offer. So some are going to offer, you know, grade 12 diplomas. Some are not. Some are going to offer parent-led, and some are going to offer only school-led or school-directed. So, or delivered, I should say. So anyhow, it's a super awesome Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to send that link to you if you got a ticket. If you didn't, just email me and I can send it to you. My email is janelle@janelle.cc, so janelle@janelle.cc, like Canadian Corporation, okay? Anyhow, now, something to be said about Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan by law is not held to provide any funding for homeschoolers. So the board does not have to if they don't want to. So a lot of homeschoolers in Saskatchewan get zero funding, whether you're parent directed or not. Now that's a shame. And yes, that's a pain in the butt. But there is a little exception for those of us living in Lloydminster. Lloydminster Catholic School Division, and anybody, even if you're not Catholic, you can register with Lloyd Catholic School Division. Lloyd Catholic School Division is an exception to the rule. They are extremely generous. And as of now, unless the government says something after today's date, they are going to offer $1,400 per child. I just checked with them a couple days ago, so if anything, everything hasn't changed. They will give you $1,400 per child for parent-directed education. So yay. We've been with Lloyd Catholic School Division for quite a few years. This year we chose to be with Wisdom because they have great online classes, and we have a ton of friends that school with Wisdom that my kids will be in their classes with their friends online, and that was really important to us this year. And the support with Wisdom is second to none. So we chose this year, as my kids are getting a little bit older, to have Wisdom homeschooling facilitators for our older children. But we did register our youngest, who's in grade 1, with Lloyd Catholic School Division, and we've been super happy with them. They're awesome. We love, love, love everybody there, and highly recommend that if you're living in Lloydminster. Okay, so what do you need to do? You need to send in your notification form, and this usually includes a birth certificate, okay, into your school board of choice, and I will send out the list for Alberta. And I will also send out a couple of links for anybody that's living in Saskatchewan. I have the boards that are available there as well, and some information for those of you homeschooling in Saskatchewan. You need to do so way before September 30th, okay? Give your board the grace. And then you need to draft and hand in an education plan if parent-directed learning is your choice. Now, that seems really lofty and scary, but I promise you it is not. An education plan is just like, figure out what subjects, so your math, your English, your whatever, as big headers, and then just say, like, under your math, I'm gonna do teaching textbooks with a supplementary multiplication flashcards and multiplication something else, you know, like speed sheets or something like that. And that's what you're going to do for your education plan for math. So it's usually just a one-page Word document of like all the things you're gonna do in your homeschooling year. And I want you to know, don't fret about like, oh my goodness, I didn't put this book or that book in it. Or let's say you start your homeschooling and by Christmas, you're like, this math program is for the birds. Like, I cannot handle this with my kid. So you decide to switch math programs and you buy something else, or you borrow from a friend or whatever. Don't worry, this is a living document. You can change it at any time, this education plan. Let's say, like, for example, for us, one year we went on a family trip to Hawaii. So I put in there, you know, we started to learn Hawaiian flora and fauna. And when we were in Hawaii, who paid for my whale watching tour? My homeschool funding for my kids. Who paid for my swim with the dolphins? My homeschool money. So it's pretty awesome. You can think through, be really creative, like, hey, I'm going to Drumheller with the kids. All your museum passes can be funded with your homeschooling money. So think outside the box. Give your kids a rich experience for your homeschooling. Okay, so I'm going to provide 2 free resources for you via the email. It's going to be the desired incomes for the Alberta government that they want you to cover in your 12 years of homeschooling. I'm going to provide you the Excel spreadsheet for the AB boards and also for the Saskatchewan residents, okay? Now, the last thing I want to share with you is what is your goal and how to reverse engineer. Now, I'm going to stop sharing with my PowerPoint because I want to really zone in on this for you guys. Reverse engineering is going to be everything in homeschooling. It will save your life on so many levels. So you need to start with the end in mind. What do I mean by this? I don't care if you're homeschooling for the next 3 months or you're homeschooling for the next 30 years, depending on how old your kids are, or the ones that are coming up through the ranks. You need to keep the end in mind. So whenever you get a minute after this call, I want you to imagine your child as a grade 12 student. Just in your brain, like, take your child and think like, okay, what do I want them to be? What kind of skills do I want them to have? What kind of character traits do I want them to have? How do I want them to interact with other people? What kind of experiences do I want them to have had by this point? And really, really get a clear picture of what you want your kid to be. I will tell you, for myself and my husband, our goal has always been 2 things: to get our kids to heaven and to raise world changers. And that has been the filter that we make all our decisions through, especially the major ones, but even little ones. Like, you know, when I'm choosing the book list for my kids to read that year, I'm like, will this help them get to heaven? Will this help them to become a world changer? When I'm deciding what movies they're gonna watch, will this help them get to heaven? Will it help them to become a world changer? So you know what you want for your kids. It might be as simple as, I want them to be a good citizen, or I want them to be a great mom, or I want, you know, my son to be a great entrepreneur. Like, whatever your goal is for your kids. And I mean, it's going to be a little bit fluid as they grow up and they start to have their own ideas and you see their talents and their abilities and you craft it a little bit, but overall, like, what do you want your kids to be? And then you just reverse engineer. So then, like, for us, knowing that our kids, we wanted our kids to be world changers, we want our kids to get to heaven, okay, that determines the activities that I do, it determines the books that I read, the movies that I watch, the curriculums that I use, all sorts of things. And then I break it down. Okay, I look at my kid this year. This year, at the end of this year, I want my kid to be able to do this. So, for example, this year with Eric, we knew it was his grade 12 year. My husband was like, I want him to know how to negotiate. Because my husband always says, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And in the world, that is very true. So he's like, I want him to be able to negotiate well. So we sent him to an adult business negotiation course in the US so that he could learn how to negotiate. He was the youngest, he was 17. He's the youngest kid that has ever taken that course. But let me tell you, he had some good stories to tell. And he gave some of those adults in that room a run for his money using the techniques that he had learned to negotiate different business deals and scenarios that they had at that course. Take my grade 3 student, okay? So my Michael, he is like one of these kids that is so good at like building little things. But he is also great, you know, in grade 3, he's 8. And emotionally, he has massive outbursts when things don't go his way. So I wanted to make sure that we were working really hard on him practicing self-control in his emotions. So that was something that I knew I wanted to focus on. Was it a curriculum thing? No, but it was something I knew I needed to focus on with him. And so when he was having a breakdown, instead of me losing it, going like, oh my gosh, would you stop like spazzing already? I was like, okay, this is the thing that I'm working on with Michael. So I would take him aside and we would like debrief and talk about it. And he got so much better at it. With Minik this year, I was like, you know what? You're going to be 13. I want you to be able to like run our home with the meals. So she was on a lot more meal prep, learning how to like thaw out meat, like think ahead, right? Thaw out meat ahead of time, prep meals, all that stuff. So I am going to not go into too much depth about this, but I want you to really take time to reverse engineer your homeschooling plan for your kids. I promise you that it will really, really, really help you to get a vision and pick your curriculum and pick all the things. Okay. I'm going to get to your questions because I see the chat box is kind of going nutsy here. But I also want to leave you with this. Love covers a multitude of sins. And love, it will be the motivator that will help you to get through this. It's not going to be easy. It's not even going to be simple. But it's going to be the best and richest experience you've ever had. I promise you. We just graduated our son and there was not a dry eye for the whole ceremony because you realize everything you've poured into your kid is finally coming around. And there were days where I wanted to throw the towel in and I was like, I'm done with this. I'm exhausted. It's too much. Emotionally, I'm spent. But the love for my child is what motivated me in those hard times. And I want you to know that whatever your circumstances, whether you have your husband's, support on this, whether you even have a husband, whether you're a single parent, whether you even work full time, you can still homeschool. How do you homeschool when you work full time? You find windows of time that you can devote to your kids. Elementary homeschooling is 2 to 3 hours a day tops. Your child goes to school, for 9 hours because there's a lot of time spent on disciplining and moving from one place to another and changing subjects and all that kind of stuff. When you're at home, you don't have to do any of that. Don't say you don't have to discipline, but it's just different. You have like less stuff to work with. So I would say under grade 6, 2 to 3 hours a day is like lots. Grade 1 to 3, like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe. Now, granted, you want to fill your child's time with educational things. You don't want them like on the computer all day long, but, or, on Xbox or whatever, on Wii. But the actual schooling part is pretty minimal. And then by the time you're in high school, your involvement is a lot less because your child is capable of reading directions in the homeschool book and that sort of a thing. So I'm telling you, whatever your circumstance in life is, you can homeschool. There's lots of different models out there. If you're working full time, be like, hey, go online, working full time and homeschooling. There are going to be lots of blogs and things available for you to get resources from. So I'm going to go into the chat box and we're going to check it out. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in here. Okay, so those of you that are on the, that want to know what the replay is, I am right now live streaming this to my Facebook page. So if you just go to Janelle Reinhardt on Facebook, you'll be able to, see it. It'll live there. Those of you that received a ticket, I am also going to send you a YouTube link. This has been recorded. I'm going to download it and post it on my YouTube channel, and then I can give you a YouTube link. So that will be sent out as well. And go ahead and share that with whoever you like. Okay, so, okay, is there an education plan that would be online and parents can just fill in to make it simple and easy to complete? You know what? I could just send you mine and you could tweak it if you like. It's pretty simple. You basically just, well, the way that I do it anyhow is put like the character traits you want your child to work on. So it's really like a more holistic approach to the education of your child, because the education of your child is not just like, can they do 10 plus 30, you know, or whatever, or, you know, can they do biology 10? It's like their whole person. So my education plan has their whole person in mind. And one of the things my husband and I like to do, just because we like to spend time together and have a date night away from the kids, is we usually go away overnight. So sometimes in the past, you know, we've just gone to like my parents overnight or something like that without the kids. Or, you know, sometimes we rent a hotel room, or sometimes we just go out for a long meal and dessert after, and in that 4-hour span, we'll work on this. But we'll take each kid and we'll be like, okay, we see this weakness in this child. We need to work on this. So that's going to be what we're working on emotionally. And then we see this skill set that we want our child to have. So, you know, for example, our Joshua, last year we wanted him to learn to work with a lathe. So he wanted to do woodwork. He was interested in that. So we found somebody that could teach him how to work a lathe. And then, you know, he was building bowls and cups and all sorts of things. But it was a skill that we knew he had an interest in. We thought, you know, that's something that in the future he can monetize. So yes, great skill to learn as a 11-year-old child. Perfect. So we did that. And then of course the curriculum falls under that. So math are doing this, language arts are doing that, social they're doing this, so on and so forth. So yes, I can certainly send that your way. My daughter is only 4. Is it worth to homeschool now? So that's up to you. Like I said, you won't be able to get funding. You can't get funding from Alberta Ed until they're in grade 1. So there'll be no funding for homeschooling until your child is in grade 1. But there is no reason why you can't go to Staples and grab a couple of preschool books or whatever and work alongside them. We know some kids that actually learn how to read before they even hit grade 1. So, I mean, they're hitting grade 1 running if they're already reading. But so it's totally up to you. Are there any homeschoolers in the Yukon territory? Would love to connect. Yeah, so if you're in the Yukon, you can go ahead and look on Facebook for pretty much any city has a homeschooling group. So if you just put in the name of your city and like homeschool, there'll be lots of stuff. For Lloydminster, there's a great group called Lloydminster Homeschool Connect. And that's a great resource. The other thing I want to just quickly mention is there's a lot of homeschooling co-ops in, you know, most major cities. I know that we belong to one, and we are, I think we're 9 families. But we meet every Wednesday. So that's a whole other thing, co-ops. But if you know of, you know, 4 new homeschooling families and you guys want to get together once a week and, you know, do a craft together or do a science lesson together or whatever, there's lots of different options for homeschool co-ops. That can be, again, a class in and of itself. But whatever you need, find it. If you can't find it, create it, okay? So what homeschooling program do you use through the Catholic School Division? It's only parent-led. So the Lloyd Catholic School Division will not give you, well, not that I know of anyhow, a school-delivered program. That's for parent-delivered only. So you take care of everything. They are simply providing you the funding. Yes, Classical Conversations Co-op. Ours is a Classical Conversations Co-op as well. Yes, in Red Deer. And so that's what we've joined. We love, 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 love it. So good. Do they ever turn down an application? I have never heard of that. I don't think so, because it's your choice. You have a choice on how you want to educate your child. That's a parental right. Okay, so there you have it. That's the information that I have. I thank you so much for coming on the call. If you have any other questions, I am happy to answer them. email me, send me, a private message on Instagram at Janelle_Reinhart or on Facebook at Janelle Reinhart. You're so welcome, Megan. Thanks for your time too. And I just want to leave this with this quote with you, okay? So Mother Teresa said, "It's not about how much you do, but how much you love." And that's what counts. So go and love on your kids. This has been a traumatic year. Be there for them. It is going to be more important for you to have their heart than to have them have 98 in math at the end of the day. So be a parent first and a teacher second, always. And you can't go wrong. Okay, thank you so much. God bless you guys. Bye for now.